Hey guys, before we go into this video, if you didn't see my shirt and my mug in the last video, I personally think that you, whoever you are, would look great in this shirt. There are probably shirts that you might look better in and shirts you might look worse in, but this is a pretty nice looking shirt. And buying things like this helps us, maintain things like working cameras and batteries and video cards and lighting equipment. I mean, it's a lot of work having a YouTube channel. It's not free or cheap. So I thank you guys for considering buying some of our merchandise. Now, today we're going to talk about something that I found really interesting when I was growing up. And it's this weird love-hate relationship that I had with Classic Mercedes when I was not living in the United States. And so it explains the title of this video, My Love-Hate Relationship with These Cars, because if most of you saw this title, you'd think, oh, it means Pierre just gets frustrated working on them, But no, it actually is a weird cultural and socioeconomic phenomenon that I don't really know how to explain. But a little background. When I was 10 years old in 1995, my dad sold his Mercedes repair shop in Fort Worth, Texas, and we moved to Lebanon, where he was from. And, in the United States, especially in the early 90s, in the early 90s, a Mercedes 123 or 107 or 126 or 116 was a special car. At the time, people treated those cars extremely well. They didn't just let them rot and go to crap. It was expensive to go buy. 1995, if you wanted to go buy a 1980 240D, a 15-year-old 240D, it was expensive. You weren't going to go buy one for $2,000 or $3,000. But my dad started to observe that around 1995, the bottom fell out with those cars. Cars that had previously been valuable started to become near worthless. They couldn't be moved. And it was because the next wave of Mercedes, like the 190E or 300E, had sort of taken their place. Because for a while, people perceived that newer was better with these things. So I think we've kind of come around now. We can agree that those are the best Mercedes built, unless, you really like a 129 or a 124. But for the most part, the majority of people would value, say, a 116 higher than a 140. And I think John Woods can attest to that. But one of the problems that my dad observed was that the cars were not really generating the income that he had previously derived from working on them. And one of the reasons was this. My dad spent a lot of his time performing singular repairs on customer vehicles that were high mileage cars that were used for day in, day out high mileage commuting in Dallas and Fort Worth. And the people who had these cars, this is like the first wave of Mercedes diesel owners. Unfortunately, a lot of them are no longer with us. Rest in peace, people like Lloyd Burns, who was another guy that my dad worked with, Bill Swope. Bill died of emphysema, I'm sure, because he's a heavy smoker, but a lot of those people who had the first wave of Mercedes that my dad serviced were bringing the cars to him for like 1, 2, or 3 repairs. By the time that my dad closed his shop, the 115 cars were getting worn out. They needed to be sorted. The early 123, same thing. They needed to be sorted. A lot of those cars didn't get sorted. They just got parked. Some of them are still parked today, waiting for me. But I can attest to the fact that my dad felt that his clientele were not going to pay him to sort these cars out, and he sort of lost patience with it. So we moved to Lebanon. He sells his business, sells everything. We go to Lebanon. Guess what? Everywhere, Mercedes 115 and 123 cars. And they're not like the exclusive versions you find in the United States. These are stripped down, worn out, gas engined, usually taxis. If you're not, driving it as a taxi in Beirut, you're tying up a goat, throwing it in the trunk, and driving it to the butcher. I'm not joking. And you'd find a few people that really prized these cars and kept them nice. For the most part, they were workhorses. And it changed my perception of the cars. I didn't feel like the cars were that special anymore. They just seemed to me like a car. You know, like in the United States, I'd see these, you know, trucks driving by me with 15 absolutely crushed square body Caprices and LTDs. And I just would think to myself, man, do they really need to make such a big, boring, ugly American car? I still kind of feel that way about some, not all, but some American cars where you just look at the car and the lack of innovation built into the car. Eventually, you look at it and you're like, man, these things were doomed from day one. I mean, they have, you know, dashboards that look like the 70s. There's nothing ergonomically challenging, not challenging, but ergonomically innovative about them. They just look like a car where if you got hit in an accident, the car would catch on fire and the steering wheel would impale your chest and pin you against the seat and you'd die. You literally would look like a guy getting his throat cut open by a nurse that happened to stop at an accident scene on Chips, if you remember that show. You literally look like the woman who drove her van through the fence into the swimming pool. And the engine just happens to be right there waiting to go up in flames. So, funny, my attitude about American cars started to transfer to my attitude about Mercedes when I was in Lebanon. And my attitude about Mercedes in the United States started to transfer to my attitude about American cars as well. It's like they flip-flop. I used to think Mercedes were special and prestigious and worth cherishing when I was a kid in Texas. And American cars were just like worthless clunkers. And then when I went to Lebanon, I was like, oh, there are no American cars here. These things are special here. The Mercedes are just like a bunch of old cars. Like I'd see a bunch of Mercedes on the side of a mountain, you know, a bunch of old fintails that had gotten blown up during the Civil War there. And I'd think to myself, oh, you know, an old car. Cool, I'm going to play in this thing or whatever. So the funny thing was, though, when I moved back to the United States, the thing reversed itself again. My dad bought a Plymouth Grand Voyager, and in Lebanon, I would have loved to have a Grand Voyager because it was American. It was different. It was big. It wasn't like a 1-liter Renault 9, which is what my dad drove. No, it would have been exclusive and interesting. And so instead, it was like, oh, get me out of this Plymouth. I just want a Mercedes 240D 115 with fat bumpers, you know, so people would recognize that I was intelligent or that I appreciated good engineering or that, I don't know, there was just something. It's funny because it was like, it reminded me of my childhood in Texas where those cars were such an integral part. And I had this weird emotional connection specifically to those cars. You know, I would see that car and I'd think to myself, wow, I feel very drawn to this car. So here's the next thing that I thought about. Maybe it had to do with my economic background because in Lebanon, the kids I went to school with thought that everything American was cool and awesome and everything that was Lebanese was not. And so maybe that had something to do with it. I'm not sure, but I wonder if any of you have experienced this weird phenomenon before where your preferences shift based on your cultural surroundings almost immediately. Is it a form of culture shock? Is it a form of cultural displacement where you have what one culture values displacing what your original culture values? I'm really not sure. But as you can see, my preferences have recovered. And I really don't want to move back to Lebanon and look for a Jeep Cherokee. You know, I'd rather be driving around in an old 240D or something because I still view those cars as special and sophisticated, even if they've had to weather a few storms. Anyway, I hope you guys loved this video. Please like, share, and subscribe. Tap the bell for notifications. And if you guys have your own experience to share about your cultural familiarity with Mercedes, please do so in the comments. And consider buying one of these shirts. I'll see you in the future.